and I'll take his word for it.
So that was his observation, and he was closer to the situation than you were, because you didn't really encounter any of the visual or anything heard about the smuggling or any of the other types of crimes.
No, that's true. That's true. But when I became involved with him, I also became a target, I believe. Mm-hmm. And we had a baby, and we believe that our child was also targeted because when our baby was born, someone at BC Women's Hospital pulled out a life-sustaining medical device called an umbilical venous catheter. They pulled this out from our daughter in the BC Women's Children's Hospital, and we think that this was an attempt to hurt her or, in fact, kill her. Mm. And this is very serious, and it shows that they will even target a baby. I mean, the whole family is not very popular with these people, I can see. And some of the other things that happened with us were we had fires in the back alley where we were living frequently, and the fire department was appearing, and the fire alarm was going off a lot. We had a beloved cat, and this was taken by a man, a very tall man with an Italian flag on his wall that lived just about half a block away from us, and he refused to give this cat back, even though the police went up there and asked him to. The police were too scared to get the cat back from this man. He took the cat on September 13th, and we got this cat back, luckily, before Halloween, and we think that that's good because we know that sometimes cats are used to frighten people. They will take a cat and hurt it, kill it.
Well, it's a ritual sacrifice around All Hallows Eve. That's part of the satanic. Part of the witchcraft and things like that. They'll sacrifice cats around Halloween.
Yes, in fact, our neighbor helped to identify this cat, and her cat was found dead.
Really?
Later.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and this cat usually never left the yard, but it was found out on the road, dead. So, and there was also a dead crow. So there were some dead animals showing up, and we also found a burnt can with pagan symbols on it on our back porch with some cat fur around the edge of it.
That tells you that it is satanic ritual. Yeah.
Yes. It was just very frightening and peculiar. We had a baby in the house,
right.
And my husband couldn't get work either. One of his employers hired him. It was with the Steel Workers Union, and my husband bought an expensive pair of steel-toed boots, and then he was told that there was no work for him. We know how you feel about organized crime, is what this employer said to my husband, and my husband was laid off, even really before he was given a chance to work.
Okay.
And one time my husband was doing a landscaping job. He was taken to the Fraser River by some young gang members. Now, the Fraser River in the lower mainland of British Columbia is where bodies are put.
Mm-hmm.
So my husband was taken here, and he was told that some people have to leave town.
Mm-hmm.
And, he was getting kind of frightened with some of these things.
Right.
And, we even got a document from Revenue Canada stamped 666.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, this is Revenue Canada gang stalking Canadian citizens. I think that's appalling.
Absolutely.
And is that shocking or?
Yeah, it is. Well, it's out of the ordinary and it's uncalled for. Let me step back because I'm trying to get a timeline for the folks who are listening out there. Your husband came across the corruption.
Yes.
He was working as a tugboat captain. Was he part of the Longshoremen's Union? Was that part of the union? Tugboat?
He wasn't. He wasn't a tugboat captain. He was working on a tugboat.
Okay, he was an employee.
I don't think he was part of the Longshoremen Union, actually.
Okay, so
but
he wasn't
actually,
a union member at that time.
No, he was not.
Okay.
But the Longshore employees are largely gang members.
Yeah,
actually,
well, organized crime runs a lot of the wharfs and
I know,
a lot
and
of
then
the unions. So that's part of the problem is the organized crime control over the unions and the gangs. So if
and it's true, if they have control over that part, then they can control if there are drugs coming in or not. Isn't that true?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So obviously, it's a combination of unions and organized crime. I mean, because there's, illegal smuggling going on at the docks. So he came across that and started to report that. And he was sending letters to officials. Was he contacting the Royal RCMP? That's what he was doing?
My husband did talk with the RCMP and the VPD, the Vancouver Police Department.
Uh-huh.
My husband wasn't sending letters really to the government at this time, but he was actively beginning to write his book called Silent Infiltration. And when he went into the security of his computer, he found out that there had been 47 security breaches, actually. So while he was trying to write this book, he felt that there was some opposition, actually.
Right. They were trying to find out what he knew.
Yes, exactly.
By monitoring the computer.
And do you know that we had a police officer, a Vancouver police officer, in our home? This was around the time that we were trying to get our cat back.
Mm-hmm.
And this police officer, my husband said, the gangs are taking over everything. And the police officer said, yeah, I know. They own Hastings Street after Boundary. And this was just a little bit shocking that the police would be aware of this. Mm-hmm. And but they don't do anything about that. And this was just a little bit confusing and a little bit disconcerting that the police would actually admit this.
Right. So in other words, they're saying, that's organized crime territory. There's nothing we can do about it. There's payoffs being made to politicians and to law enforcement people not to investigate that type of activity on that street. So
exactly.
They're letting you know flat out that this kind of stuff is going on, and they're really not doing anything about it, or they don't have any capability to do anything about corruption.
Yeah, I was talking with my husband on Monday, and he said that it would be all right if I read some things from his book, which he had already started. And he said specifically what you just said. He said, Canada came out with some new laws regarding terrorism, and within that law, they included organized crime and organized crime groups. This law is not enforced by the police at all in BC. I asked the police in this book why. There is some suggestion and rumor that the higher-ups in the police force are corrupt and receiving payoffs from elements of organized crime. This suggestion or rumor, I believe, is true, especially after, and then he goes on to discuss a police chief that commits suicide